The history of a temple, stone, mandalas, families, power, two countries, one border, one place. Let's listen what is happening here. For those who doesn't know me, my name is Miguel Vélez. I am a Spanish architect working in Asia since 2008, and I'm based here in Bangkok.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool.
We are going to talk about two things. We are going to talk something very serious, that is the issue that is happening in the border between Thailand and Cambodia. First, we are going to understand what is the value of this temple and what are the things that are being built there. And the second thing, how the people use this temple to make a conflict. So, enter video and let's go to listen this story.
Have you ever, stood before some ancient ruins and just felt this awe? Like it's way more than just rocks piled up. That feeling that it's, I don't know, a deliberate expression of how people saw the whole world.
Mm-hmm.
Well, today we're sort of peeling back the layers on exactly that. Our deep dive is into this really fascinating connection between Hindu cosmology, sacred geometry, and the actual design of ancient temples. Specifically, we're looking at how this idea of the mandala shaped these incredible stone structures across Southeast Asia.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And our mission today, looking at your sources on these two quite remarkable Khmer temples, Preah, Vihear, and Prasat, Thom, is to really get a handle on how this core concept, the mandala, actually started in Hindu culture.
Right.
And then, how it spread its influence.
Mm-hmm.
So you can quickly grasp not just what these temples are,
Right,
but fundamentally why they were built the way they were. It's about uncovering that sort of cosmic logic under the surface.
Okay, cosmic logic. I like that. So before we see how this blueprint takes shape in actual stone, let's maybe nail down what mandala really means. Beyond just, a complex drawing. We see the art, but what's the basic idea here connecting it to circle and its bigger meaning in Hindu thought?
Sure. Well, the word mandala itself, it's straight from Sanskrit. Yeah, literally means circle.
Yeah.
But visually, especially when you look at Hindu and Buddhist architecture, it's usually much more complex, often concentric squares and circles.
Okay.
It's not just a pattern, it functions as a cosmological diagram.
Mm.
Essentially, it's a kind of spiritual map that dictates the spatial layout of sacred places. Think of it like the universe shrunk down, a very precise, ordered reflection of the cosmos.
Huh.
The central point in a mandala that's absolutely key. It typically symbolizes Mount Meru,
Mount Meru.
which is the mythological axis, the world center, the sort of pivot point of existence in their cosmology. It's not just a mountain, it's the conceptual heart.
Mm. So it's less a physical peak and more a philosophical anchor point built right into the structure.
Exactly.
Okay, so how does this abstract concept, this cosmic diagram, actually get translated into stone and space? How do you, build a universe someone can walk through?
Well, it's pretty ingenious and deeply spiritual. Mandalas don't just, define the overall shape. They inform the temple's precise orientation. They set up a clear hierarchy of spaces, and they basically orchestrate the whole way you move through the sacred area.
Okay.
Imagine you're a devotee, right? You're on a pilgrimage inside the temple walls.
Yeah.
As you move through a temple built on these mandala principles, you're not just walking. It's a symbolic journey.
Ah.
A deliberate kind of ascent from the everyday world, the periphery, moving step by step towards the spiritual center, towards enlightenment. And this whole idea, this guided spiritual ascent through sacred geometry, it was absolutely fundamental for loads of Khmer temples and even whole city plans. It embedded that Hindu cosmic order right into their world. Architecture as a spiritual transformation.
That makes so much more sense. You're not just looking at a temple, you're kind of living this mini divine journey.
Okay, let's really unpack this with some solid examples, starting with, a real masterpiece that shows this off.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Preah Vihear Temple. I mean, its location is just stunning. It sits right on top of a 525-meter cliff in the Dungrek Mountains in northern Cambodia, literally looking down over the plains of Thailand. It makes an immediate statement.
Wow.
And this temple, it was dedicated to the Hindu god Shiva. Its main construction happened roughly between the 10th and 11th centuries under Kings Suryavarman I and Suryavarman II. That was a time of huge architectural ambition for the Khmer Empire.
Given how much thought clearly went into these designs, I'm curious about Preah Vihear's orientation. Does it follow the usual pattern we see at Angkor, or is there something specific going on with its alignment? It's north-south, isn't it?
It's a great question, and yes, that's a really key feature here, directly tied to its mandala design. Unlike, say, Angkor Wat with its typical east-west orientation, Preah Vihear runs precisely north-south.
And this isn't just random. It perfectly reinforces that spiritual symbolism we were talking about. The whole procession climbing up the cliff face from the bottom to the sanctuary at the top, it physically reinforces that idea of spiritual ascent.
Right, the climb itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's laid out almost like a linear mandala. It guides pilgrims through these successive gateways, gopuras, towards the main sanctuary. And that sanctuary, way up high, it symbolically represents Shiva's home on the mountaintop, echoing Mount Meru itself. It's a deliberate architectural mirroring of the cosmic mountain. The journey is the mandala, in a way.
And it's recognized globally, too, isn't it? It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site that says a lot about its importance.
It is indeed. Inscribed back in 2008. And the reasons UNESCO gives really highlight why it's so special. First, obviously, architectural mastery. It's just an outstanding example of classical Khmer architecture and planning. Incredible skill.
Okay.
Second, the landscape integration. How it blends that dramatic cliff setting with the sacred symbolism is pretty unique. The environment is part of the experience. Third, that symbolic alignment we just talked about, that unique north-south axis. It truly embodies the spiritual path, a physical metaphor.
Right.
Fourth, its authenticity and preservation. It's remarkably intact, lots of original materials.
Yeah.
Gives you a real glimpse into the past.
Yeah.
And finally, its outstanding universal value. Basically recognizing it as a masterpiece of human creativity, really pushing architectural boundaries.
Yeah.
Because of its remote commanding spot and that very specific symbolism, Preah Vihear was mostly a major ritual center. It's different from, say, Angkor Wat, which was more urban, built for bigger public gatherings. This was more about focused pilgrimage.
So the landscape itself became part of that spiritual story, amplifying the temple's meaning. Okay, so from Preah Vihear's heights, we see this linear mandala guiding the ascent. But what about applying these ideas somewhere else, maybe a bit more practical, further west perhaps?
Right. That brings us nicely to Prasat Thom. It's located further west, also in the Dangrek range, actually very close to the current Thai-Cambodian border. Like Preah Vihear, it was definitely part of the Khmer Empire's big network, religious and political. It's thought to date from around the 11th century, and it was strategically placed along an old Khmer highway. This road linked Angkor, the capital, to another major center, Phimai.
Ah, okay, so it was on a route.
Exactly, which gave it this dual purpose. It was a spiritual sanctuary, yes, but also seems to have been a vital rest stop for travelers, pilgrims, maybe officials moving along that highway.
A place for physical and spiritual rest.
Precisely. A place to rejuvenate both body and soul on a long journey. Now, Thom is definitely, less grand in scale compared to Preah Vihear. But its design still sticks rigorously to those core mandala principles. It still reflects that deep Hindu cosmological underpinning. You've got a clear central shrine, you've got enclosing walls, subsidiary buildings, all arranged with deliberate purpose. Its sacred geometry, its alignment probably to cardinal directions and maybe celestial events. It expresses the same basic Hindu cosmological order that you see in the huge monuments. It just shows how adaptable and consistent that mandala concept was, even for a space that had a more, let's say, functional side to it, alongside the sacred.
That's really interesting how one core idea, the mandala, gets applied across different scales and functions. So if we look at both Preah Vihear and Thom, and maybe even think more broadly about Khmer architecture, what does this tell us overall? Are there common threads, like a shared design language running through them, despite the differences?
Oh, absolutely. Preah Vihear and Thom are perfect examples of how this mandala-based design, which really has its roots in Hindu culture, was consistently localized, adapted, and applied within Khmer temple building. There's this remarkably consistent architectural language you see right across the Khmer Empire. Not just these two, but you see it in the really famous ones too, like Angkor Wat, Kante Shrey.
Right.
And that consistency points strongly to a shared metaphysical framework, a unified way of seeing the cosmos that guided how they built these sacred spaces. Each temple becomes a kind of sacred model of the universe. And there are specific shared elements that make up this language. First, the central sanctuary.
Yeah.
Always the spiritual heart. It invariably represents Mount Meru, that cosmic mountain.
Okay, Meru again.
Yes. It's the symbolic home of the main god, the ultimate goal for the pilgrim, the axis point. And yeah, the axial paths. These are carefully aligned, usually to the cardinal directions. They create these processional ways that symbolize spiritual progress. Moving along them is deliberate, a kind of map guiding you to the center.
A spiritual roadmap in stone.
Exactly. Then the layered enclosures. Temples often have multiple surrounding walls or galleries. These represent the concentric layers of existence, moving from the outer mundane world towards the inner sacred core. Each layer you pass through is a deeper step into the spiritual realm.
Like peeling an onion to get to the center.
Sort of, yeah. And finally, elevation and ascent. The physical climb, whether it's up steps to a platform or towards a towering central spire, it directly mirrors a metaphysical climb towards the divine. The rising architecture itself encourages you, literally and figuratively, to reach a higher state. It's a whole system, designed to reflect the cosmos and transform the worshiper.
This whole dive into the mandala really shows how one powerful idea can literally shape a culture's buildings, its landscape. But stepping back just a bit, how did these Hindu concepts even get to Southeast Asia in the first place to have such a massive impact?
That's a really key piece of the history, and it shows how dynamic things were back then. Hinduism, especially the Shaivism worship of Shiva and Vaishnavism worship of Vishnu traditions, started influencing mainland Southeast Asia surprisingly early. We're talking maybe as early as the 1st century CE, and it wasn't usually through conquest.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it seems to have been largely spread by Indian traders, priests, scholars, maybe artisans, who traveled to the region. They introduced Hindu cosmology, rituals, sacred texts, art, and architectural ideas to the local elites and courts. And the Khmer Empire, which really flourished from the 9th to the 15th centuries, they were central to this. They didn't just copy these ideas from India, they actively adopted them, but also localized them. They blended them quite seamlessly with their own existing indigenous beliefs, often animist practices.
Ah, so it was a mix.
A unique synthesis, yeah, creating a distinctly Khmer expression of these Hindu concepts. And in this context, temples weren't just places to worship. They were also incredibly important symbols that legitimized the king's rule. Kings were often seen as being divine themselves, or at least representatives of the gods on earth. This is the Devaraja concept, the god king.
Right, the divine king.
Yeah, it wasn't just about power, it was about cosmic order. The king, by embodying divinity, ensured harmony and prosperity for the whole kingdom. Building these grand temples was part of that sacred duty. And that links back to why they chose locations like mountains. Mountains were often already considered sacred places, homes of spirits or gods and local beliefs.
Okay.
So putting a temple dedicated to Shiva on a dramatic clifftop like Preah Vihear, that just amplified its sacredness, its cosmic connection. It made it a powerful statement linking heaven and earth.
It's really striking, though, how these incredibly ancient spiritual places are now, well, relevant to current events, caught up in modern politics. It feels like such a contrast, their original unifying purpose versus being points of division today.
They certainly are, and it really underscores how potent these sites remain, symbolically and politically. Both Preah Vihear and Thom have unfortunately found themselves right in the middle of modern geopolitical tensions, especially between Cambodia and Thailand. Preah Vihear, for instance, the International Court of Justice awarded the temple site itself to Cambodia back in 1962.
Right, I remember hearing about that.
But that ruling has been a source of ongoing friction ever since. Tensions really flared up. There were even armed clashes around 2008, right after it got its UNESCO status. Issues of access to the site and sovereignty over surrounding land came right back to the fore.
Wow.
And similarly, Thom, because it sits so close to the border, the exact line of which has been disputed, it's also been a point of contention. Both countries have, at different times, reinforced their military presence nearby. So yeah, these ancient spiritual centers, designed maybe to reflect cosmic harmony, have ironically become flashpoints for earthly disputes. But, despite these ongoing issues, it's crucial to remember these temples are recognized globally as part of our shared human heritage.
Yeah.
Their preservation, maybe even exploring joint management possibilities, could potentially become a way to build bridges, foster cooperation and respect across the border. They could shift from being symbols of division to symbols of shared history.
So wrapping up this deep dive then, it's incredibly clear these aren't just, piles of old stones decaying away. There's so much more.
Exactly. Preah, Vihear and Prasat Thom, they really are like living mandalas. They're powerful, enduring expressions of a whole worldview where architecture, religion, cosmology, they weren't separate things. They were deeply woven together. They show us how profound Hindu thinking, filtered through Khmer ingenuity and local traditions, continues to stand quite literally in stone, a testament to a meticulous cosmic order.
And for you, our listener, really looking at these layouts, the symbols carved into them, the incredible settings they chose, it gives us this amazing window into how ancient people thought, how they imagined the universe, and how they tried to mirror that huge vision in these massive, lasting structures. It's a reminder that buildings can be more than just functional, they can be pathways.
And maybe, just maybe, as these temples sit right at the heart of modern political tensions, they also offer a lesson. They remind us that the sacred and the worldly often intersect, sometimes uncomfortably. But perhaps by revisiting their ancient origins, by really understanding their profound shared meaning as these cosmic blueprints, we can find pathways, not just to understand the past, but maybe towards reconciliation and appreciating that shared heritage in the present too. Sometimes, the oldest wisdom might just hold keys for navigating modern challenges.
What a fascinating deep dive.
Just now we have listened the theoretical point of view of the architecture of this temple, and something really wonderful, something that I really keen in because I'm studying the mandalas and how is the influence of the mandalas in the architecture of the South of Asia. But now we are going to see how the humans are using this kind of temples and this kind of architecture done in the past to try to solve our issues of nowadays. So now, let's go to listen what is the story and the conversation through these temples done by the human being. Enter video.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're embarking on a mission, really, to unearth the true complexities behind a long-standing conflict. It often makes headlines, but the underlying currents, they're rarely explored. You probably heard about border disputes, ancient temples. But what if we told you there's a much deeper game at play? Maybe one driven by, hidden agendas, powerful families, and a struggle for vital resources. We're taking insights from a really illuminating article that peels back the layers on the, let's face it, historically tense relationship between Thailand and Cambodia. Our mission today is to get beyond that surface level, expose the surprising facts that truly drive this conflict, and give you a shortcut to being well-informed about something way more intricate than it often seems. Okay, let's unpack this. So for years, the world hears about disputes between Thailand and Cambodia, mainly revolving around ancient temples, right? Those magnificent 12th century sites. But our sources suggest something quite different, that this focus on old stones is often just a convenient, a smokescreen. So if it's not the temples, what's really at stake here?
Yeah, what's fascinating really is that the real frontier, where both nations have a huge amount to gain or lose, it isn't those historical sites at all. It's actually an area of vast open waters. And they're incredibly rich in natural gas and oil. This isn't just about, historical claims. It's about massive natural resources, the kind that could fundamentally shift a nation's whole economic future. We're talking about the overlapping claims area, the OCA. It's huge, 27,000 square kilometers in the Gulf of Thailand. And both countries have been locked in a dispute over this specific region since way back in 1972. But for decades, the public story often circled back to the temples. It kind of diverted attention from this much more valuable prize.
Right, 27,000 square kilometers. That's a mind-boggling scale. It changes the entire economic calculus.
Yeah.
So for someone who thought this was just about ancient stones, what is the magnitude of this energy treasure we're talking about? How much wealth is potentially down there?
Well, to put it plainly, it's a staggering amount. This seabed, it's believed to hold something like 11 trillion cubic feet of natural gas.
Wow, trillion.
Yeah, and maybe 300 million barrels of oil, too. To give you some perspective, that's enough energy to fuel, significant economic growth for either country for decades. It could mean energy independence, immense wealth, and it's not just the seabed itself. This area also impacts a popular Thai island, Koh Kood. Cambodia actually questions Bangkok's sovereignty over Koh Kood, and Thailand knows controlling it gives them a privileged position for extracting fuels in their waters. So the island itself becomes this decisive enclave in the dispute.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting, maybe even surprising. We've pulled back the curtain on the economics, the real treasure. But hold on, because our sources reveal an even deeper layer. This isn't just about nations and resources. It's a conflict intricately woven into powerful families, almost like a generational saga playing out internationally.
Exactly. Our sources trace the current dynamic back to a really critical moment in 2001. That's when Thaksin Shinawatra, he was Thailand's prime minister then, and of course he's the father of the recently suspended PM, Prathong, he signed a Memorandum of Understanding, MOU 44, with Cambodia. And this agreement specifically aimed to frame a division of those territorial waters, a seemingly pragmatic step towards sorting out the OCA dispute.
Okay, so MOU 44 sounds like a potential turning point. But what was the immediate reaction in Thailand? Why did it provoke such a strong response from the conservative side?
Oh, it wasn't welcomed. Not at all. Far from it. The conservative military and those close to the Thai royal house, they saw it almost as a betrayal. They felt Thaksin made far too many territorial concessions, basically giving away what they considered Thai sovereign territory. In fact, Thailand has rejected MOU 44 in pretty much all subsequent talks with Cambodia. They see it as fundamentally illegitimate and a deep personal issue tied to Thaksin. And there's this critical personal dimension you just can't ignore. The extremely close relationship between Thaksin Shinawatra and Cambodia's then Prime Minister, Hun Sen. It was very well known. Hun Sen actually strongly supported Thaksin during his years as a fugitive, in exile from Thailand. And this deep personal tie, it was always seen as a clear sign of disloyalty by conservative Thai sectors. They saw Thaksin prioritizing personal links, maybe family allegiances, over the national interest. It really fueled suspicion.
So let's fast forward to today. Have these deep-rooted family connections continued to shape the conflict? Or have the new leaders managed to break free from that history?
Oh, absolutely. The influence continues strongly. It's almost like a baton being passed in a relay race, The current leaders are Hun Manet, Hun Sen's son, who became Cambodian PM in 2023, and Prathong Shinawatra, Thaksin's daughter, who, as we know, served as Thailand's PM until her recent suspension. Both are heavily influenced by the long shadow of their powerful fathers, and now they're tasked with resolving a conflict their fathers nearly settled, or at least tried to settle, decades ago. You can really see how the personal history of these families is just deeply tangled up with the region's geopolitical tensions.
That really reveals something fascinating, doesn't it? How international disputes can be rooted in these domestic power struggles.
Yeah.
And the recent flare-ups, they seem to highlight how border and temple issues can be used as this, calculated smokescreen for deeper political maneuvering, especially within Thailand's internal power battles.
Precisely. Thailand, under Prathong, tried to accelerate an agreement on these waters towards the end of 2024. The government in Bangkok, they understood this was maybe an internationally favorable moment to enter the energy market, start exploiting those hydrocarbons in the OCA. But Prathong's position in the coalition government was, weak. And her many enemies within Thailand's powerful military elite were basically just waiting for her to make a misstep, ready to pounce.
Right. So with all those forces against her, she was in a vulnerable spot. Did her opponents find the opening they were looking for? What was the catalyst for her suspension?
They found it. And it was a PR nightmare for her. On June 15th, a phone call between Prathong and Hun Sen was leaked.
Leaked, okay.
Yeah, leaked to the media. In it, she referred to him rather condescendingly as uncle. And maybe even more damagingly, she criticized some of her own generals. This became the perfect excuse for the conservative Bumjaitai party, led by the ambitious Anutin Champikurul, to just immediately withdraw support from the government. Anutin resigned as interior minister, threatening a full no-confidence motion. It all happened very quickly, and ultimately the Constitutional Court suspended Prathong from her duties, citing dishonesty, ethical lapses, effectively removing her from power. This perfect storm, it's clearly seen by our sources as the military and conservative elites achieving their goal. Getting the Thaksin family out of power, at least for now. It definitely raises a potent question about who leaked that call. It certainly served the interests of those looking to undermine the Shinawatras and their attempts to re-engage on the OCA.
And how does Cambodia fit into this specific dynamic? Are they just reacting to Thailand's internal politics, or are there maybe deeper motives from their side, perhaps even exploiting Thailand's divisions?
Cambodia, they've shown their cards pretty clearly, and it directly relates back to that family dynamic we talked about. They've basically suggested that the potential fall of the Thaksin family from power will lead directly to a new hardening of relations between the two countries. From Phnom Penh, the message is unequivocal. They're prepared to go to great lengths to defend what they see as their territorial rights regarding the OCA. And crucially, in Cambodia, there isn't that same kind of internal power struggle you see in Thailand. What retired Hun Sen dictates, his son Hun Manet voices, it's much more top-down. And Hun Sen feels incredibly strong right now, notably with the unwavering backing of Beijing.
Right, that backing is key.
It is, and it raises an important question. Could Cambodia be intentionally provoking a response? Maybe to consolidate internal support, especially given that clear power structure. Historically, Cambodian leaders, particularly Hun Sen, have often focused on neighbors like Thailand during periods of, say, internal discontent. It helps maintain stability, diverts attention, so there's a real concern they might be trying to provoke a military response, paint Thailand as the aggressor, then appeal to the international community or the International Court of Justice. That could potentially gain them sympathy, maybe even sovereignty over disputed sites, not just the OCA, but maybe even temples like Thom again. Thailand is acutely aware of these strategies, these geopolitical games, but it faces challenges because of its own internal political divisions. It makes presenting a unified front much harder.
So what does this all mean for the wider region and maybe beyond? This isn't just a bilateral spat between two nations or even two families. It's playing out on a much larger geopolitical chessboard, isn't it? With global powers influencing things.
Absolutely. These clashes between Thailand and Cambodia are happening against a backdrop of wider challenges in Southeast Asia. Think about trade disputes, economic pressures, especially from the U.S., and the U.S.'s strategic retreat from the region, particularly under the previous administration, canceling USID programs. A general sort of disengagement that left a substantial power vacuum.
And when a major player steps back, someone inevitably fills that vacuum.
Yeah.
So who's exerting the most influence now in this part of Southeast Asia?
China. Definitely China. ASEAN, which includes both Thailand and Cambodia, is seen by many, and our sources really highlight this as increasingly ineffective for resolving internal conflicts among its members. Just look at Myanmar.
Right.
The U.S., under its current foreign policy, seems to have largely renounced being a global policeman. It's focusing mainly on commercial interests. So the only major power capable of imposing some degree of order or influence, or at least mediating effectively, is Beijing. And China has very close ties with Cambodia. That's obvious from the controversial construction of the Chinese military naval base in Sihanoukville.
Mm-hmm.
That clearly positions Beijing as a closer ally to Phnom Penh than to Bangkok. However, China's foreign policy usually aims to avoid creating unnecessary enemies. So his role seems to be more that of a careful mediator in what is, for now, a low-intensity conflict. They're subtly urging both sides to de-escalate, but certainly with their own interests in mind regarding regional stability and resource access.
So how does Thailand navigate this? Especially given its long-standing policy of neutrality, it sounds like a really triple position.
It is. Thailand has played that card of eternal neutrality for decades, trying to balance delicately between Washington and Beijing. But now it faces a profoundly new scenario. It's not just that Thailand doesn't want to choose sides. It's that if the U.S. maintains its current policies where maybe it doesn't mind ceding some political influence to China for short-term trade gains, then China might become Thailand's only stable major alliance. And that generates significant uncertainty for Thailand. They deeply value their independence. They don't want to become like Cambodia or Laos, states widely seen as being largely under Beijing's indirect dominion.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and the article highlights this broader, unsettling global trend, a sense that the global hornet's nest has been stirred up. It points to events like the invasion of Ukraine, actions in Israel as examples. The lack of a unified international response creates a kind of domino effect. The global village seems to be fading, replaced by what our sources call a multi-village. A fragmented world where powerful actors feel more emboldened to exploit weaker ones in regional conflicts. And this is often fueled by leaders promoting ultranationalism. The sentiment, this rising regionalism and diminished global oversight, profoundly contributes to the volatility of situations like the one between Thailand and Cambodia.
Okay, so we've covered the hidden resources, the powerful families, the geopolitical chess game. But there's one more layer, maybe the most insidious, that our sources reveal is truly fueling this conflict from within. The battle for truth itself. Let's talk about the information landscape in both countries. It seems to arguably make the conflict worse.
Yeah, our sources point out something quite stark. The press of both countries is absent when most needed. Just think about that for a second. In a military conflict like this, sensible, independent journalists who actually want to tell the truth, they're absolutely crucial. Without them, information is offered exclusively by the warring factions, which, serves unscrupulous villains very well. It allows them to completely control the narrative, inflame tensions.
It really paints a picture of modern media. or the lack of it, directly contributing to the problem, doesn't it? When facts are scarce, what fills that void? Nationalism.
Precisely. In the 21st century, with this critical lack of real, independent media and information being constantly violated by polarized social media, where credibility often goes to the loudest voices, it just fuels the rapid rise of ultranationalism.
Yeah.
This is exactly why our sources describe nationalism as a form of illiteracy, because it suppresses critical consciousness, it turns intelligent people into, well, puppets serving a greater power. It stops people thinking critically about the complex reality, makes them accept simplified, often dangerous narratives. And both Thailand and Cambodia have unfortunately fallen into this trap. It suggested that corrupt high spheres in both countries, maybe feeling delegitimized by internal issues or just looking to distract, have resorted to this very primal tactic. Find an antagonist in your neighbor, as Nietzsche warned, right? Weak societies often need an enemy to construct their virtue, justify their existence. It conveniently diverts attention from their own internal problems, their own misgovernance.
Are there differences, though, in the media landscape between the two countries?
Yeah.
Or is it just uniformly bleak with truth totally suppressed everywhere?
There are differences, though neither is ideal, not by any stretch. While Thai media certainly has its deficiencies, its biases, there's generally more freedom, some semblance of independent reporting than you find in Cambodia. In Khmer territory, Hun Sen, and now his son, they control the entire narrative, pretty much completely. The conflict is routinely called the Thai invasion. There's constant talk of brave Cambodian soldiers holding back the enemy. The Cambodian press has even made outlandish claims like a Thai fighter jet being shot down or the enemy using chemical weapons against civilians. Their own defense minister claimed that.
Wow. Chemical weapons.
Yeah. It shows an almost complete suppression of any dissenting or objective reporting. It creates this single state-sanctioned truth. A Thai journalist, Preah Rajanafruk, who's described as an oasis of sanity in the midst of media chaos, pointed out what's truly concerning here. It's that both Thais and Cambodians are often tragically willing to believe false news if it just reinforces their ultranationalist ideology that the enemy is absolute evil. This willingness to accept misinformation, even really outlandish claims, it just underscores how deeply this information battlefield impacts the actual conflict. And it makes any real resolution incredibly difficult. And this raises that critical point, doesn't it, about the role of information or misinformation in perpetuating conflict. When critical thinking is suppressed, it's incredibly hard for citizens to navigate complex truth. And it also highlights that specific focus we wanted to bring out, how this suppression of truth lets the hidden agenda of powerful families persist, using the temples as that convenient distraction.
So what have we learned from this deep dive into the Thailand-Cambodia conflict? It's clearly far from just a simple border dispute over ancient stones. We've seen how it's intricately woven with, 1, fast energy resources in the overlapping claims area, and 2, critically, the power dynamics of 2 incredibly influential families, the Thaksin and Hun Sen dynasties, using those border and temple issues as a calculated smokescreen, really, to advance their own political and maybe economic agendas. We've also explored how global geopolitical shifts, particularly the changing roles of the US and China, are playing out on this regional stage. But perhaps most critically for you as a learner, we've shown a light on the alarming absence of serious, impartial journalism in both countries. And this void allows ultranationalist narratives, outright misinformation, to just flourish. It creates an environment where truth is easily manipulated for political gain, fueling animosity between people who, as our sources suggest, actually share far more similarities than differences. So this leads us to a final provocative thought for you to consider. In a world where information can be so easily distorted by those in power, where truth itself is weaponized, what responsibility do you have as a learner, as a consumer of information, to seek out diverse perspectives? To critically question the narratives presented, especially when powerful interests are clearly at play? What stands out to you from this deep dive?
Okay, so that is the information of the things that is happening. I can read you here in the comments if you really want to add something. I hope that this thing is going to end up soon, because at the end, a war is not good for anyone.